So welcome back to another episode, and yes, the episode is called 10 out of 10 anime. Now these are some animes that I grew up with that I really believe are 10 out of 10s. I'm going to go through them today, and they are of the old school variety, and the reason why I want to cover them is because I'm worried that people are going to forget about them. Absolutely. And I'll ask you guys, what are some animes that you think are 10 out of 10s? Give some recommendations down below. Now, yes, I haven't covered anime for a long time on the channel, but this one was calling to me. It was calling to me because I grew up with all of this anime. I love it and adore it, and I just want to talk about it today. Now, the first anime I'm going to talk about here is Black Magic M66. And this is by Shiro Masamune, the great guy behind Dominion Tank Police, Appleseed, and Ghost in the Shell. Now, this was released in 1987. I think I saw this in 1988-89, and I fell in love with it. And it was originally a manga from 1983. We finally, after many, many years, we got it translated over here in 1990. So I saw the anime first, and then I read the manga. And what can I say about the manga? It's very kind of different than this anime. So without giving any spoilers, the story is basically the army loses a couple of its top secret assassin androids. They're kind of like Terminators, and they crash and the military loses sight of them. They don't know where they are, but they become activated and they have one mission: to murder the person who's embedded in their memory chips. Unfortunately, that is the main scientist who created them. He put in his granddaughter's name as a placeholder, thinking that these things wouldn't ever be activated. They activated by accident, and they're coming for his granddaughter. And so the military has to step in and stop them. And what I love about this is it's very much like the Terminator. Two androids that will not stop until they get to their mission. And there's a reporter in here who gets involved in all of this and is trying to protect the granddaughter from these killer machines. And I gotta say, when I first saw this, some of the action and some of the animation and some of the themes that were going on in here really rubbed me the right way. I just was like, this is absolutely the most killer thing ever, especially when I was a big fan of the Terminator movies. And this has a certain vibe of that. But what's fascinating is this was written before the Terminator, as I said, in 1983. But a big high recommendation if you can find the original. It's only ever been released in this country in DVD form, and I even picked up the Japanese Laserdisc because I was such a big fan of it. So high recommendation for Black Magic M66, a forgotten classic. Now, I've mentioned this next anime before, and that is for Otaku No Video. And this came out in 1991, and this is a beloved anime of mine. Obviously, I first watched this on VHS from my local anime store. They did their own subtitles of it, and it was really charming to see back then. And I fell in love with this because what this realistically is, it's a look at the old days of anime, but precisely the company Gainax. And it really follows through the early 80s of anime fandom and what it was to be an otaku. And you'll be like, what is otaku? I know they don't use that word anymore. It means like an obsessive fan. So you can be an otaku of cars or of anime or of anything that you're totally obsessive about. And it's about these two guys who are obsessed with anime and how they start their own company, and that they're also absolutely, completely crazy anime fanatics. And it's really great to see the fandom spread throughout this. They even have real life interviews at the time. I know some of them were staged, absolutely, but it adds to the flavor of this. And me being an absolute obsessive fan back then, I really related to this so much. And I came back from England, I think I've talked about it when I was 21, and I saw this anime, and I was like, these guys are me. And it felt great that I could relate to some people in here. And the great news about this anime is you can still get it. And here's Otaku No Video, released by Anime Ego on Blu-ray. And it's so nice to be able to get them now in modern form. And I even have the original, this is crazy to see, the original laser discs right here. Yeah, it's so amazing. It was such a great time period. And I first discovered this anime nearly 30 years ago now. Another anime I have mentioned before, but I really want to talk about it today, especially the second part, is Megazone 2-3, and we'll talk about part 1 here briefly. I think a lot of people really love part 1, and I'm a big fan of it, but for me, over the years, it's part 2 is my absolute favorite. And just to sum up the storyline really quickly here, is that it all takes place in the 1980s, or does it? You find out that you're actually on a giant spaceship, and there was a war with aliens many years ago, and they sent out lifeboats into the universe to protect mankind, and they were known as Megazones. And you're on Megazone 2-3, and you find out that you're not living in the real world, you're living on this spaceship, and there's a war still going on with the aliens, and it's got great mecha action, it has great blood and guts, which I won't show here, and strangely than the time, I won't even mention or show any of this, obviously, it had sex scenes in anime, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe what I'm watching. And I first discovered this anime in 1987, and I discovered it through art books. Yes, this was a very different time in anime fandom where we couldn't readily get anime in the 80s. We could get it from our local clubs, but you couldn't download it. There was no internet. So I discovered it through an art book, and I would just be looking at the art book going, wow, one day I hope I can see the anime. And that was in 87. In 89, I was finally able to see parts 1 and 2 and into 3 later on as well. And I fell in love with it. The interesting thing about Megazone from part 1 to part 2 is the character designs vastly change. So obviously here we have some great Mikimoto artwork. All of a sudden, the characters completely change into more realistic versions. And part 2 is awesome. I love the entire punk aspect of it. At the time, I was a skateboarder, kind of borderlining punk. At the time, I had purple hair, I had a nose ring, and I really related to these characters rebelling against the establishment of being in this giant spaceship and fighting against the military within. Great storyline, and here's a little known fact, is this anime, the Megazone, influenced The Matrix. So the creators saw Megazone and thought, hey, you know what? This is pretty inspiring. We should go and do something like that as well. And they made The Matrix. So Megazone is very inspiring, and it was way ahead of its time when it came out in 1985 for part 1, and in part 2 came out in 1986. 86, what a great year. Now next up is an anime that I grew up with that is a staple of my childhood, and it really had a huge impact on me, and nobody even knows what it is anymore. And that is Gal Force right here. I always call it Gal Force because it was all girls. Great storyline. The first part here, Eternal Story, came out in 1986. And the part that I want to talk about, Gal Force Destruction, that came out in 1987. Now to sum it all up, Gal Force is about a gigantic intergalactic war with the all-female solenoids versus the evil alien Paranoids. And this war's been going on for a very long time, and there's been gigantic losses on both sides. Both sides have lost their home worlds, and it's critical that this war comes to an end. And I don't want to ruin it, but there's some engagements that happen within the anime that hint that the war can come to an end, and it's a really kind of cool little twist, and I don't want to ruin any of that. But what I loved about this was the character designs by Kinichi Sonata. And I grew up watching all of this stuff, and I even had a poster of Gal Force in my room at the time in like 1987, 88, and it really had an effect on me. I just loved the character designs, I loved the mecha, I loved the action of it all. And I really loved the music, and this anime really stands out to me, and there's only ever been DVD copies released in this country. There's never been any other way to get it. There is no Blu-rays currently of this, and that's really unfortunate, and I really hope that they change that. And yes, there's a part 3 as well, and then there's Raya Gal Force. There's a whole other bunch of Gal Forces that go on, but the first 3 parts are the one that really stick with me. And I was so lucky in 2017 that Kim and I went down to SakuraCon down in Seattle to meet the great Kinichi Sonata. And I was lucky enough, oh my god, I did a whole video on it. You should watch it. It's called My Fanboy Moment. It's one of my favorite videos I've done on the channel, where I talk about going to this convention and meeting one of my idols and going up to him and him drawing for me one of the characters from Gall Force right here. And it's really funny. I went up to him and I said, "Oh, Luffy." And I was meeting the main character who has a star on her face, and she's the big star, no pun intended, of the second one, Destruction. And so I asked him to draw me that character because she's like a punk. She's really cool. But he drew me Rabby instead, and this is the drawing that he drew right here. This is a drawing. This is not part of the book. And it's insane for me to grow up and to be worshiping this guy's artwork and to meet him one day and to finally get a drawing from him. It was unbelievable. And Kim got a Pris drawing from Bubblegum Crisis. So yeah, Gall Force is one I highly recommend. If you like girls, if you like action, I highly recommend it. I even got the old Laserdiscs back in the day. Great stuff. Now we're not done with Kinichi Sonata yet, because we have to go back to 1989. And boy, did we ever get a great OVA for Writing Bean. And this is the DVD version. Yes, there is also, which is so great, there is also a Blu-ray version of it released by Anime Ego. Highly recommend getting that as well. This is not an advertisement for them, but they did release the Blu-rays, and that was great because for me, I originally saw this on beta. I know.
Oh no, beta.
I didn't have a VHS player at the time. I wrote to my anime club and they recorded Writing Bean for me. And I gotta say, this is an amazing anime. And it was a one-shot. That's the thing, it was a one-shot and it was completely storyboarded by Kinichi Sonata. He came with the story, came with the characters, and the characters are Bean Bandit and Rally Vincent. And Bean Bandit is a driver for hire, and he's brought in, he's hired by a certain person, and everything goes wrong, and he has to kind of like make it all right, and it's awesome. I actually think Bean Bandit is one of the coolest anime characters ever created because he's absolutely crazily violent, but he's such a charming, nice guy at the same time. And there's been talks about bringing back Bean Bandit and Writing Bean, and I really would love to see that. And it's honestly about Kinichi Sonata's obsession with car movies and the macho action stars at the time. So Bean Bandit is an accumulation of many things like Rambo and Clint Eastwood. You also get those beautiful cars throughout and the technology and the guns. It's great stuff. Definitely watch Writing Bean. It's a one-shot OVA, highly recommended. Now, I don't get to talk about Gundam enough on this channel, and we're going to talk about some old school Gundam that is a 10 out of 10 that still holds up to this day, and that is Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory. And this is 13 OVAs from 1991, and what a Gundam show this is. I gotta say, the animation is top quality. It still holds up to this day. I think it rivals a lot of animes that were released now. This is a true classic taking place after the 1-year war, and the Federation has created 2 new Gundams, the GP-01 and the GP-02. And guess what happens? Zion captures the GP-01, and why that's a big deal is this is the first Gundam that has a nuclear warhead launcher. And so this is a very deadly Gundam. And so they steal it, and it's an amazing anime. I don't want to ruin anything, but it's about the Federation trying to get it back. And there's some big consequences in this anime, some great characters, and I'd like to see Gundam return to storytelling like this. They got it so right, they did it so well, and it's one of those ones that really stands up to this day. And I also recommend 0080 War in the Pocket, another great OVA series for Gundam. Now this next anime I first saw in 1988. It came out in 1985 in Japan. It was based off a manga. They changed a lot of it, absolutely. And that is for Fight Ixer 1. And this is the DVD copy that came out over here. Again, there's no Blu-ray copy that's been released in this country officially yet. And I I adore this. I know I've said that a few times, but I adore Ixer 1 so very much. It had everything that I wanted as a younger guy. It had really beautiful women, incredible mecha designs, gore and horror, and an amazing science fiction story that brought it all together. Basically, you follow the main girl, Nagisa, a regular high school student, but then all of a sudden around her, some very horrific things start to happen, and a girl called Ixer 1 comes in to try to help her, to save her from the evil aliens, the Cthulhu. Yes, I know, they're using that terminology for these aliens, and it's all led by Big Gold. I gotta say, the storyline here, the mecha, it's all top notch, and it still holds up to this day so very much. A great science fiction storyline if you want that, but it also has really horrific gore that I'm not gonna show here, and a beautiful relationship with Nagisa and Ixer 1 that is heartfelt. It's really heartfelt, especially with the inclusion of Ixer 2. And you know when they say they don't make them like this anymore? They don't make them like this anymore. And I'm so happy that they made Ixer 1, one of the greatest animes of all time to me personally. And again, I got the books before I saw the anime, because that's how it worked back then. I'd walk into my local comic book shop and I'd be like, what are these? And I'm like, I'd open them up and I'm like, oh, these are some like anime. Like, oh my God, like, what is this, Ixer 1? And so I'd flip through all of the pages of these books, and I was like, I've got to see this anime one day, and eventually I would see it. Now we have to go back to 1994, and I can't believe I saw this nearly 30 years ago now, and that is for Macross Plus, the anime, the OVAs, and then they combined all those OVAs and made a movie out of it. Now this was very important to my anime journey. I kind of gotten out of anime a little bit, a tiny little bit. I went to England, I hung out with a friend over there that was really into anime, and he showed me Macross Plus. And I was like, oh my God, I kind of heard about it, but I was such a purist of the original 1982 television show and movie that I was like, I don't know. I'd seen some stuff from Macross 7, and I was like, I don't know about that. And then I saw the very first OVA of Macross Plus, and I was like, oh my God. Now what this is, it's about test pilots. This is the Top Gun of anime. So you have your main character, Isamu Dyson, and Gold Goa Bowman, and they're childhood rivals that are gotten back together to test the YF-19 and the YF-21, two Valkyries that are competing with each other for government funding. So whoever wins will get funded. And so there's a big rivalry there, but then there's some other big concepts that come in here. It's complicated, I'll just say that. It's really kind of crazy. But what I'll say about this anime is, it's unbelievable. It's a must watch if you haven't seen it. And yes, there's a lot of storyline that happens before Macross Plus. We had the 1982 television show and the movie that kind of explain everything, and this takes place after that. But the dogfighting, the action, I mean, it was unbelievable at the time. And this anime, 30 years later, is still cutting edge. If you watch it now, you'll be like, look at this animation that's going on. It's really staggering. All hand-drawn. Yes, they were bringing in a lot of computer animation as well at that time, but a lot of it was hand-drawn stuff, and light years ahead, and it still is now. And over the years, I had to pick up the Blu-ray from Japan. That was the only way to watch it at one time. And then they finally released this version here. And yes, I don't recommend this to everybody. I recommended it to myself. This is the huge Macross Plus Sharon Apple Deluxe Edition. This is all the vinyls and the OVA and the movie in here. And I love the music. And that's something else that has to be said about Macross Plus. The music is a 10 out of 10. The music is its own thing. In fact, I was listening to all these vinyls this week, and every song I remember from that anime. Every song, and very memorable stuff. Yeah, I even picked up the Laserdiscs back in the day, which is really kind of wild. That's when I first got a Laserdisc player, because I'm like, I need a Laserdisc player for Macross Plus because it is really something else. And also over the years, but even back then, in 1995, I think I picked this up, the art book, the Macross Plus art book, and I love that cover. Just with the fighter and all of the armaments underneath and the main characters there. Great stuff. I mean, Macross Plus, it really changed my life. It made me kind of open up and go, oh my God, I love anime. I don't just kind of like it, I'm obsessed with it. And that's why I wanted to come in and talk about some of these dear animes to me, because they meant so much to me growing up. And I'll ask you guys, what are some 10 out of 10 animes that you highly recommend to everybody? Let them know so everybody else can find some great 10 out of 10 animes for sure. So guys, I really loved talking about anime today. I really enjoyed it so very much. So anyways, guys, until next time.